Lyra, the lonely curator of silent archives in the deafening city of Ethel, dedicates her life to preserving fragile, quiet sounds. Her greatest goal is to find the mythical zero-point resonance, the perfect, true silence. One morning, her antique sound dampener array registers an impossible reading, zero point zero decibels. Following the trace of this anti-sound, Lyra descends into the city's forgotten subterranean levels. She discovers the source of the zero-point resonance, a massive obsidian sphere suspended by delicate quartz chains in a cavern known as the Great Foundation. This sphere is absorbing all sound, creating the absolute silence she sought. However, the sphere is critically unstable. The city's new automated rail line construction overhead is causing massive vibrations that are stressing the quartz chains. Lyra realizes that if the chains shatter, the sphere will fall, releasing an acoustic shockwave that will permanently destroy every silent sound recording in her archives. With only minutes before the next construction blast, Lyra sacrifices her most powerful archive, the sigh of the last glacier. She pulverizes the unique, acoustically perfect ice crystal and uses its microscopic dust to coat the failing quartz chains, creating a temporary, sound-dampening buffer. The buffer absorbs the destructive vibrations, stabilizing the sphere. Lyra succeeds in saving the perfect silence, but her primary collection is gone. From that day on, Lyra changes her title to the Curator of New Echoes, knowing that the greatest silence is not an end, but a protected space where the world's softest voices can begin again. Lyra reached the cavern just as the rumble of the overhead drill line intensified. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and one of the quartz chains began to visibly fracture. She looked desperately at the tools she had brought: measuring rods, dampening gels, and an emergency kit. None of it would be strong enough to stabilize 100 tons of obsidian. Then, her eyes fell upon her emergency kit. Inside was her most prized, most irreplaceable possession, the sigh of the last glacier, a small, perfectly preserved ice crystal Lyra had spent a decade acquiring. This crystal was so acoustically perfect that placing it in an anechoic chamber would reduce the noise floor below the limits of human hearing, a one-time powerful dampener. With a deep breath, Lyra pulled out the crystal. It was heartbreaking. The destruction of history to save a greater truth. She slammed the crystal against a rock, instantly pulverizing it into a cloud of microscopic, acoustically inert dust. She raced along the edge of the cavern, throwing handfuls of the precious dust at the fracturing quartz chains. The dust adhered to the crystal, immediately absorbing the destructive, high-frequency vibrations from the rail construction. The sound-dampening effect was instantaneous and absolute. As the final tremor hit, the chains held firm, the obsidian sphere settled, and the zero-point resonance stabilized. Lyra collapsed in the quiet, the smell of ozone and damp rock filling her lungs. The city raged above, unaware. She had saved the perfect silence, but at the cost of her perfect collection. When she eventually climbed back to the archives, she changed the brass plaque on her door. It no longer read, Curator of Silent Archives. It now read, Curator of New Echoes. She knew that the greatest silence was not an end, but a protected space where the world's softest, newest voices could finally begin to be heard.